Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, welcome Rachel Michaelsen. I'm so excited that you're here, and I would love to introduce you to everyone. Rachel Michaelsen is a licensed clinical social worker located in the San Francisco Bay Area of California in the USA. And she uses several different energy psychology techniques, including emotional freedom technique, happening, sound healing, and more to individuals, couples, and groups online via conference telehealth. And she has been studying and using energy psychology for more than 20 years. And she teaches a wide variety of courses to mental health providers, including courses on using energy psychology with trauma survivors. So that's very interesting. We may talk a bit about that today. Rachel, by nature, is a highly sensitive person, and this allows her to tune into individuals and groups and hone her skills at listening deeply to herself and to others, using her intuition to guide her in her healing work. She also offers free twice a week energy and sound healing gatherings, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. And those are offered online as well. The groups are open to all, and you can find out more by contacting her, and we'll have all her contact information associated with this podcast. And also you can go to her website, which she will give at the bottom of the interview. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Great to be here, Lori.
Thanks for coming. And I'd just like everybody to know that I have known you for a very long time, maybe 10 years or so, possibly, as certainly more in the last 5 or 7 years through our association together with ACEP, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, where you and I have both taken on very different and collaborative leadership roles. For you for Humanitarian Committee, and for me on the board of directors, and also colleagues and friends, and we share a lot in common. So thank you personally from my heart for being here today, and I'm excited to share your world with the audience.
Great. So where did you want to start?
Well, is there anything you wanted to let the audience know about yourself before we kind of launch into the more content about healing from the heart with intuition and helpers, healers, and guides?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things about me. One is, I always say, if I hadn't gone into this field, I'd probably be a botanist.
Okay.
Love plants. I have 25 plants in this room alone. I don't know how many plants I have in my home and in my yard. And I take a lot of pictures of plants. So that's one thing, like I just really like that connection to the natural world. And I also do a lot of plant propagation. So I just love that whole process of nature reproducing and creating and assisting in that. So I'm currently really excited about some dahlias that I started from seed that are looking really good. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what flowers pop out. So that's one of the things I get excited about. And I think the other thing about me that I wanted to tell you is I'm sort of embarrassed by this, but I'm super nosy. And nosy is really good when you're a healer, because then you want to know a lot of stuff, right? And I think it's similar with plants, like, okay, if I propagate it this way, what's going to happen? And what's going to happen here? And if I use this fertilizer, what's going to happen? And I'm following the whole process. But it's the same with people. Like, I'm always interested in all kinds of details about people and their lives, so that kind of allows me to go deeper into like just finding out the details, and then noticing how unconsciously I kind of turn those into some understanding about the person. I mean, I think that's where the intuition pops in. I have all this information, and how does that get synthesized into what I then am helping the person work on, and how I'm facilitating that work.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So I don't know if you've been asked this before, but do you see a common thread in how you work with people and how you work with plants?
That's a great question. Well, some of it is watching them, just appreciating them. And then what am I feeding them?
Okay.
Right. So what's the, I come from the field where we talk about interventions. What's the intervention? So I recently found this fertilizer that is just great for all of the company is what they make works like, my roses have been crazy this year. Other things are blooming. I propagate begonias. I've never had flowers this great on my, like all of them have had these beautiful long periods of flowering. So it's sort of like, what is it that you need that I can give you that will allow you to blossom?
Oh, I love it. And we also have had a lot of rain this year in California, and with cooler temperatures. So it kind of extended our spring into summer without that burn that we're used to of everything dying off.
Exactly. And since I live north of where you are, we get a longer time without that.
Yeah.
But yes, the water has helped the roses, and the fertilizers help the roses. And so it's been fun.
Do you use energy practices with your botany experiences?
I have to say, because in this room with my 25 plants, I do sound healing, and it used to be, this is behind my house. I used to do it in my house, and the plants were like crazy happy.
Okay.
Like I wasn't even now I'm fertilizing my house plants. People always ask me, well, how do you keep your houseplants going? I'm like, you just have to water them. You could throw fertilizer in, but water makes a really big difference.
Yeah.
The fertilizer is amazing, but there's certain tuning forks that are specific for plants, but I just think they love the vibration. And then the plants around here are doing pretty well, because around this building, there are plants up against the building and then a little farther away. And I'm like, I think they're having a really good time with all this vibration. So I could do more than I do, but I've sort of like, by the time everybody gets fertilized once a week,
it's enough.
I'm necessarily going to get the tuning forks too.
So, Rachel, not everyone knows about sound healing and tuning forks. So could you give us a quick kind of overview of what that's about?
Yeah. So sound is vibration. Energy is vibration. Different vibrations. We all are vibrating at different levels. And when you're feeling really down, you're vibrating at a different level than when you're really excited. So we can use different things to change our vibration. And what I think is interesting is, a lot of people say, use this and you'll get that. And I'm like, but it sort of depends on the person. So I have over 50 tuning forks. I can show you a couple tuning forks. Here's some tuning forks.
And maybe also for those on audio, you can describe what they look like. And we'll try to also put links in so people can learn more about sound healing and tuning forks.
Yeah. So you've probably seen a tuning fork. And sometimes they look just like this. They don't have a weight on them. So it's just a tuning fork, which is, if you've seen them, you can look them up online. It's 2 prongs. And then at the bottom, there's something round. We actually hold them right below the prongs and not on the round part. And you strike them against something. I actually sometimes strike them on a rubber ball. And that causes them to vibrate at a particular hertz, depending on which one it is. And then you can listen, or with the ones that are weighted, so it's a tuning fork, but it has two round pieces of, they're more of the metal on them, and you strike those at an angle onto the weight, and then you can listen to that. And or you can put that on your body. So either ones. You can put them on acupressure points, you can put them on chakras, you can listen to them, you can put them, depending on which fork, where you're feeling like your muscles are tight, and it will change the vibration and what's happening in your body. There's some research that shows certain tuning forks were studied that increase the nitric oxide in the bloodstream, which brings your blood pressure down.
Okay.
Now, what I found is interesting is like certain sounds people really like and other sounds people can't stand.
Yeah.
And so, and then also I've worked with people where they didn't like a sound, and then over time they actually started to really like it. And it's like, oh, something is changing. And there are times where I'm using forks and I'm like, oh, this is annoying. And then other times I like that combination.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting. There are lots of companies that make tuning forks.
Mm-hmm.
I just always recommend that if people buy tuning forks, that you don't buy inexpensive ones, because you really want something that will last and gives you about 25 to 30 seconds of sound. And the really inexpensive ones don't tend to do that. I also use these chimes that you see that are tubes that are different lengths and thicknesses, and they're different notes and different vibration. And then over here, I have this big quartz triangle, and I also have a piece of quartz that has a very long sustain, and quartz is really good for anything that you're working on. It'll help increase the healing.
So quartz, you're meaning like a crystal quartz, that it's comprised of that? That's
what it's made out of, and that's what this is made out of here.
Uh-huh.
Is the same thing.
It's a little harder to see the one in the back because of your blue background, and it looks like it might be transparent.
They're totally transparent. So it's a triangle. That's a triangle, and this one is just a simple thing. And if I turn the, let me turn the, you'll be able to hear this. Can you hear that?
And it's coming through.
You see how it kind of waves up and down?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just notice, like I'm finding with that, my head's kind of relaxing a little bit.
Okay. It's like a high pitch, for those who might not be able to hear it, a high pitched sustained note, but it has overtones in it. So it kind of has this wobble, sort of a vibration to it.
Exactly. And so the tuning forks, some of them you use them on their own, some of them you'll use them together, and that will create a different sound. And I was using them before the pandemic. I was doing work on people's bodies very successfully, like people who had had surgery, and just bringing the inflammation and the fluid down. Really great. Like a lot of body workers are starting to use them. And then I started just using them because we were in Zoom land really quickly. And I started using them, and then I got equipment to make it more easy for people to hear, and I just started inviting people to these groups, and I just started intuiting what to do.
Oh, lovely.
I have to tell you, there was no recipe. It was, what happened was I was working with somebody else, and she had a plan, and it just didn't fit with how I wanted to work. Like she wanted to do a lot of stuff that I just couldn't. It was like, it was great, but it wasn't my thing. And I just said, you know what, I think I just need to do my own thing and see what comes to me.
Wonderful. You know, while you have that ability for us to hear the sound in the room, turned on or off, whatever it is, maybe you can share one more sound with us.
Yeah. So actually, let me play a sound that is very, this is just a good grounding sound. Starting to fade a little.
It's like a low hum for those who can't hear it.
Yeah, it's not.
It's subtle.
Actually, I can There we go. That's less subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other sounds that are really lovely are particularly these. That makes you smile. So those I think are made in India at a particular ashram, and they have a really long sustain relative to these that are not as long. So what I figured out was if I worked with groups of people and individuals and I added to the techniques I already knew from energy psychology and I started adding the sound on top,
Mm-hmm.
I would get all of these benefits. And I had started doing that a little bit when I was seeing people in my office, because I had the tuning forks for probably 9 months before the pandemic hit, and I had taken classes, and I was like having people do like emotional freedom technique tapping, but then I would hold the tuning forks when they finished to their head, to their ears, and things were moving so much more quickly. And then I bought this early in the pandemic.
And you're pointing to what now?
I'm pointing to the this is the crystal chime.
Okay.
It's just a rod of crystal, and I bought that one, and I would just, something said use that, like just add that when someone's like finishing a piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a conversation with one of my classmates from the tuning fork class, and we were doing online trades early in the pandemic to try to calm ourselves down.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she and I were doing trades in person early on, and she had bought all the tuning forks, and she actually lugged, like it was, what did she tell me, 19 pounds of tuning forks into my living room, and we put out the massage table, and we did trades, and I was working on her, and she was talking to me because I'm not a body worker, I'm a psychotherapist. So I'm like, well, what do you want to work on and what's going on? And she was talking about an upset with a friend of hers.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was, and then there was this shoulder pain. And as I was working, I just got, because you see these tuning forks are colored, right?
Okay.
And often people who use this particular set of forks, the color will come to mind. And I suddenly saw this fork in my mind, and I'd never used it, and I didn't know what it was for.
It comes across looking purple.
Yes, it's kind of a maroony purple color. The weights on the end. So it's silver with the weights on the end. So I used that on her, and she felt so much better. And she goes, what did you use? And I told her, and she goes, oh yeah, I don't know that one that well. And we pulled out our book and went, oh, that was the exact fork you should use for that issue. Oh, isn't that kind of interesting?
Yeah.
Like, okay, then I started to think, okay, I should just trust myself. Like
Yeah.
I'm listening. And then I sort of trained with the idea that there's a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say when you're doing talk therapy? How do you know what to say? Well, you say something and you see the result.
Right.
Does the person shut down or open up? Do they cry or get angry? Do they space out or do they get deeper?
Yeah.
That gives me information.
Yeah.
So the tuning fork is doing the same thing. It's like, okay, what happened? What's the result?
Great. Oh, I love these examples. You know, it's bringing to mind, sometimes you're making it sound like that it's easy, effective, and natural, which is great. But I know that that's not the whole story. Because some of our listeners might think, well, then forget it. I have no way of accessing this because it's not easy or effective for me. So are there times when you've had obstacles or challenges, and either through the tuning forks or through music therapy, music healing or energy healing, that you've been able to kind of break through, maybe using your intuition or with helpers, healers, or guides?
So I have a suspicion that I have helpers, healers, or guides, but they just don't reveal themselves. They're just there.
Okay.
Sometimes I have this image, it could be one of my grandparents, but I didn't know them, so I don't know like who it is.
Okay.
So what I know is that if I get out of worrying that I need to figure it out, and I just am with what's happening, and I just don't turn off like, you should do this. Oh, no, you shouldn't. I'm just like, okay, I'll try that. Let's see what happens. So, and I really actually think that I learned that from someone at the first energy psychology conference I went to.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because a bunch of us got in somebody's VW van. We were in San Diego, and she lived in San Diego, and she said, I'll take you down to see the beach. And a bunch of us got in her van, and she drove us to this beautiful place. And while we were going there, I was saying, well, how do you know what to do next? And there's all these protocols. How do you know? And she goes, well, you learn the protocol, but you just have to trust yourself and pay attention, and you'll figure it out. And it was sort of like, I suddenly was like, you mean there isn't a recipe I have to follow? And that gave me this freedom.
Okay. Yep, that openness and permission. I know when I teach intuition classes, it's one of the things I talk about is if you want to get in your own way, like try to come up with an answer or have pressure. But if you want to really make room for intuition, then exactly what you're saying, this sense of trust, which is hard to do when you're feeling blocked or pressured, or you're not sure of yourself, but the trust and the openness and the willingness to kind of explore and play, have a playfulness. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think if you have a lot of critical voices from your past, you have to just really tell them to take a break. I always tell people, you send them to a lovely place where they'd want to be. Like, wouldn't you like to go to the Caribbean and just lay on the beach? Like, that's where you should go. And you know what? It's a permanent vacation. You are not welcome back here. Like, if you send them to some horrible fiery place, they're going to want to come back. So I'm like, you were there for a reason. Thank you. Let you go, and then listen. So you do, so that just what's there. And also I just say, well, you'll figure it out. And I'm always like, how did I know to do that? I don't know. Do I need to know? No. Did it work? And if it didn't, that's okay. That's the other thing, is if it didn't work, let's try something else, as opposed to I failed.
Right. Yeah. So you don't get caught into that stuckness energy. You want to encourage the creativity, the flow, the problem solving, the success.
Exactly. I mean, earlier today I have somebody who consults clinical consultation with me, and she was talking about this case. I'm like, I don't have a clue what to say to her about this difficult situation. And then I was like, okay, well, just keep asking some questions. It'll become clear. And then I went, I think I know what's going on. And it was like, it just took me like acknowledging I don't know, and then just, okay, let's see what comes up.
Wonderful. Those are such great examples and so useful. And I'm wondering, Rachel, is there anything like really good advice that you've been given? You already talked about the advice you learned at the beginning of the ACEP experience for you about allowing and just kind of trusting your gut or trusting your intuition and letting things kind of come in and not have a particular recipe or a structure. But is there any other advice that comes to mind for you?
That to me has been the biggest thing. I guess the other thing I would say is, if you have a structure that makes you feel safe, let yourself use it. Don't be wedded to it, but let yourself use it, because you kind of need some structure when you're learning something new.
Okay.
And then but it can't be, I have to do it this way, but, oh, this is a guide, and then let's see what else comes up. I mean, that might be advice I would give people, because when I'm teaching stuff, I'm like, I'm going to teach you a protocol, but you're not always going to follow it that way, and that's okay. But you have to have something you start with.
Right. Otherwise, it's just a mess of information, and you can get overwhelmed and feel lost.
Exactly.
So you start with the guardrails, and then when you're ready, you can kind of freestyle on your own. And the way you have, like you said, you're not a body worker, and I'm sure that you let your clients know that, you know, the scope of practice as a clinical social worker, but you're allowing these other things in, sound healing that you're being trained in, and so on. Yeah.
Right. And it was interesting when I was learning sound healing, because the people who were teaching me, I mean, there aren't a lot of the people, they're not psychotherapists, they're body workers and acupuncturists. I'm like, why am I even doing this? How am I going to use it?
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning, I just felt so attracted to it, and I can't sing in tune. I don't play an instrument. It's not that. You really don't have to be musical at all to use sound.
Okay, because it is vibration. You know, we were just at the ACEP conference, and Jonathan Goldman was speaking, and he talked about the power of humming, because people have become intimidated by voice because of all of the competition singing shows and so on. We think we have to have perfect pitch and all of this pressure, when it used to be just the natural way to express with voice. It's what babies learn to do, you know, right at, you know, not long after they're born, to use their voice for healing and soothing and exploration. And so humming, at least, is, you know, maybe it hasn't been relegated to the do not cross zone yet.
Right. I will hum.
Yeah.
I have been known to hum in my groups.
Yeah.
I even say you can hum off tune.
Yeah, and you get that vibration in your chest or your body as you're humming, or even if it's more localized in the mouth and nose. And then what he showed is, if you close your nostrils, you can't hum. So it's encouraging the breath.
Exactly. And it's a great thing to do. And I was just talking to a client recently who says, now I hum in my car all the time, because I had said you should try humming and see what happens.
Yeah, sometimes we just need permission to kind of do what comes naturally for us.
Right.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. Rachel, you've shared so many gems with us, and I'm wondering, as we're coming to the close of our time together today, is there anything more you'd like to share that we haven't talked about yet?
I guess I would just say I encourage people to just slow down, just listen. Even when something's going on, just trust you'll get the information. Practice that. Sometimes it takes a long time, but that's okay.
Slowing down, that's not a message we hear very often.
No, do more. And I'm a get a lot of stuff done kind of gal.
Yes, you are.
But I'm one of those people, when I'm with somebody doing healing work, the goal is to be totally present.
Yeah.
And to be in that space to see what comes. And it's interesting, the more you do the work, the more comes. And sometimes I'm like, how come I just had that thought? Like, where did that come from? And it's like, well, I don't really know. Was it them? Was it their guides? Was it me? But I've had people say to me, like, how did you know that that was the issue? And I think you told me, you just didn't know that you did.
Yeah.
So just making that space to listen and be present.
Okay. And slowing down to allow for that to happen.
Yeah.
So we don't get caught up in our day-to-day thinking and the worry and the monkey mind that kind of chases its tail. But
right. And how am I going to prove that I actually know what I'm doing, and la da 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 da. Just I'm here listening.
That's great. Thank you. I feel very inspired to slow down.
Yes.
And maybe hum a bit.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah, that's so great. So Rachel, how can people find you if they want more information?
So I have a really simple to find website. It's Rachel at rachelmichaelsen.com. And my last name is Michael, S-E-N. A lot of people do O, so it's a family joke. We always spell our last name and then go S-E-N. And you can get a hold of me through that website, because there's a contact page, and it has information about the group. And if you want to come to the free group, just email me and I'll send you more info that has a link and gives you the lay of the land. So
And your first name, not everyone spells Rachel the same way.
It's the shortest way, Rachel.
So there's no A at the end.
There's no A.
Yeah. I mean, not at the end, but towards the end. Yeah.
Right.
Got it. Okay. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast, video cast, interview, soundcast. I love it. It's really delightful to have the sound accompany us really as a guest in its own right.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.